Have you ever heard of a lost empire? I mean, a civilization that literally ruled the known world, that wrote the playbook for conquest, and then just vanished so completely that for thousands of years they were basically a myth. Well, that's the story we're diving into today, the story of the world's first real superpower, Assyria.
So let's start at the end. Picture this. Their capital city, the mighty Nineveh, is burning to the ground. The empire is collapsing. And their entire history, everything they ever were, is about to get locked away in fire and buried for thousands of years.
And right there, that's the big mystery with the Assyrians, isn't it? I mean, these guys were a huge dominant force. Their name struck fear from Egypt all the way to Persia. But be honest, can you name a single Assyrian king? Probably not, right? So how is that even possible? What makes this so fascinating is that this wasn't some slow, gradual decline. Assyria didn't just kind of fade into history like a lot of other empires. No, it was there one day and then bam, gone the next. So what on earth actually happened?
Well, here's the kicker. The forgetting, it wasn't an accident. It was revenge, pure and simple. When the Babylonians and the Medes finally took them down, they didn't just want to win the war. They wanted to erase the Assyrians from history itself.
And the way they did it is just staggering. This was a systematic campaign of destruction. They went to monuments and literally chiseled off the king's names. They leveled entire cities until they were just nameless hills of dirt. Temples were torn down, brick by brick. It got to the point where even saying the name Assyria was forbidden, a taboo.
And you know what? They almost pulled it off. For 2,000 years, Assyria was just a ghost story. But then, in the 19th century, archaeologists stumbled onto something incredible. They found entire libraries of clay tablets. And the craziest part? They were preserved, baked hard, by the very fires that were supposed to destroy them. For the first time in millennia, the Assyrians were about to tell their own story.
So that begs the question, right? How did this empire become so incredibly powerful and so deeply hated in the first place? Well, they pretty much invented a brand new way to rule, one that was forged in iron and fueled by weaponized fear.
You know, they didn't just pop up as a superpower overnight. For hundreds of years, their main city, Ashur, was just a kind of modest trading town. But then, around the 14th century BCE, something changed. They declared independence and started expanding. Fast forward to the 9th century, and under kings like Ashurnasirpal II, they turned into this relentless engine of conquest, gobbling up a huge chunk of the known world.
Okay, so to really get the Assyrians, you have to understand what drove them. It was their whole belief system. See, the king wasn't just a ruler. He was seen as the literal sword of Ashur, their main god. And Ashur wasn't some god of farming or poetry. He was a god of war. This is key. It meant that for them, conquest wasn't just about getting rich or powerful. It was a sacred duty. Going to war was basically a form of worship.
And oh boy, did they put that ideology into practice. They created the world's first professional, full-time army, not just farmers called up for a fight. They were the first to mass-produce iron weapons, which gave them a huge technological advantage. They had specialized units like archers, cavalry, the whole deal. And they were masters, absolute masters of siege warfare. If you were hiding behind a city wall, you were not safe.
And here's the thing, they wanted you to know how brutal they were. Kings like Ashurnasirpal II didn't just commit violence, they advertised it. They literally carved these boasts onto their palace walls for everyone to see. This wasn't just random cruelty, it was calculated psychological warfare. The message was crystal clear. Resisting us isn't just a bad idea, it's the most terrifying thing you can possibly do.
Okay, so conquering all that land is one thing, but actually ruling it, that's a whole different ballgame. The Assyrians were smart. They knew that all their military hardware, the army, the weapons, needed some powerful software to actually run the empire. And their method was brutally simple, but man was it effective. Step 1, you march in and make a horrifying, very public example of the local leaders. Step 2, you break the spirit of the people by deporting entire populations, just scattering them all over the empire so they can't organize a rebellion. Step 3, you put a loyal Assyrian governor in charge. And Step 4, you record everything. And I mean everything, every last tax payment, every bit of tribute owed.
And as awful as it sounds, the system worked. It really did. For more than 150 years, which is a really long time, this combination of pure terror and ice-cold record-keeping held this massive, diverse, and, let's be real, very angry empire together. It was, in a word, brutally effective.
This quote from King Tiglath-Pileser III just tells you everything you need to know about their mindset. Listen to his words. He's not talking about people, he's talking about farming. He's uprooting rebels and planting loyal subjects. To the Assyrian elite, human beings were just another resource, something to be managed and moved around to make the imperial machine run smoothly.
But this is where it gets really weird. This is the great paradox of the Assyrians. The same civilization that basically perfected state-sponsored terror also created the world's first great library. Seriously. Under King Ashurbanipal, they sent people out to collect and copy down all the knowledge of their world, literature, law, medicine, you name it. It shows you they weren't just obsessed with controlling people, they were obsessed with controlling information itself.
So if their system was so darn effective, why did it all come crashing down so spectacularly? Well, it's almost poetic. The very thing that made them so strong, that absolute reliance on terror, was also their greatest weakness, their fatal flaw.
Think about it. The Assyrians rule over subjects, not citizens. Their empire was built on fear, not loyalty. Nobody liked them, they just feared them. So you had this entire empire filled with suppressed hatred, just this giant powder keg of resentment, simmering, waiting for one tiny spark to set it off.
And that spark finally came in 627 BCE, when their last great king, Ashurbanipal, died. Instantly, the empire plunged into civil war. All their enemies, especially the Babylonians and the Medes, saw their opening. And just look how fast it all fell apart. It's stunning. In just a couple of years, their religious capital fell. And then, in 612 BCE, the final nail in the coffin, Nineveh itself was conquered.
And this quote from a Hebrew prophecy at the time, it just perfectly captures how everyone felt when Nineveh fell. This wasn't just seen as another battle won or lost. No, this was seen as justice. The city of blood had finally gotten what it deserved. You can just feel the sheer joy its enemies felt, celebrating the idea that the Assyrian name would finally be gone for good.
So that brings us full circle. Their name was erased. Their cities were turned back into dirt. But did the Assyrian Empire really disappear? Well, yes and no. The name was forgotten, for sure, but their blueprint, their instruction manual on how to build and run an empire, that turned out to be way too useful for anyone to just throw away.
And you can see their fingerprints all over the empires that came next. The Persian Empire, for example, their famous provincial governors, the satraps, yeah, that's basically just a rebrand of the Assyrian model. The incredible Persian royal road, it was built on the foundation of the Assyrian King's Road. And the Romans, with their obsession with bureaucracy and keeping records of everything, they were definitely taking a page from the Assyrian playbook.
And that leads us to the most beautiful, perfect irony in this whole story. The very same fires that were set to destroy Nineveh, to wipe it from memory forever, actually ended up preserving it. Those flames baked their clay tablets, turning them into stone-hard records that could survive for millennia. The ultimate act of destruction accidentally became the ultimate act of preservation. And it's why we, all these thousands of years later, can finally hear the Assyrians speak.
So, let's leave it with this thought. Assyria created a blueprint for how to wield power. It's a formula of centralized control, fast communication, complex bureaucracy, and of course, overwhelming force. They might seem like ancient history, but that model, that way of organizing and controlling huge numbers of people, it casts a very, very long shadow. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? What parts of that ancient, brutal, but undeniably efficient blueprint are still running in the background of our own world today?